Hi, book friends. Welcome back to Booking with Liz. Spring has sprung, and what comes with that is flowers blooming, bees are buzzing, and pollen is in the air. I apologize for all of you who suffer from chronic allergies. We're just getting started. And not to mention, have you looked outside? The rain and the thunderstorms that we have experienced and will be experiencing this weekend? Well, don't fear. I have a spring reading list that you can enjoy inside safe this weekend. So to start us off, we can't talk about spring books and just look how cute and tiny this is. This is the copy of The Secret Garden that we have here at Paris Urban County Library in our juvenile section. It is just to die for. You can just put it in your purse and pull it out whenever you need it. But besides the point, we can't talk about a spring reading list and not mention the quintessential spring classic, which is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgkin Burnett, which really doesn't need a lot of introduction. I'm sure we've all heard about The Secret Garden from time or two, but here is a quick blurb. In The Secret Garden, we meet our young heroine, Mary Lennox, who is a spoiled, ill-tempered child who has to go live with her reclusive uncle after the death of her parents. And when she gets to pronounce the name of it right, Misselthwaite Manor, she meets a whole host of characters. She meets the hardy housekeeper, she meets the cheerful Robin, and her sickly cousin, Master Colin. With the help of the Robin, she ends up finding the door to the secret garden. And when she enters, she finds that it is barren. There is no beauty, there is no life where, as far as the eye can go. So she takes it upon herself to restore the garden in secret. And as she brings the garden back to life, so does life come back to the inhabitants of the manor. Colin is no longer so sickly, and the reclusive uncle tends to come out of his shell. I love The Secret Garden, and I think it is a great pick for this time of the year for both children and adults alike. Especially, you parents out there, if your kids have never read The Secret Garden, this would be a great bonding experience between the two of you. It just fosters so much nostalgia, especially within me. And I think it can remind the reader of when they encountered their own secret garden before in the past. Whether that be, takes you back to memories of you working on your family's farm and tilling the land for the crops for that next coming season. Or maybe it was working with your grandmother in her own garden. I know for me, it always reminds me of the first time I ever watched the movie and just remembering seeing Mary's expression of wonder as the garden came back to life. So check it out today. Like I said, it is here in our juvenile collection here at Paris Urban County Library. Next up, we are switching. This is strictly adult fiction now. And here we have Greenwood, which I really just want to show off this cover. If this doesn't scream spring, I don't know what does. You can't really tell. It is a beautiful shot of forest land. We have beautiful greenery and just an image straight on of big tall trees. And trees are really important to this book, hence why it's included in our spring reading list. But let's get to the plot. Oh, just mild disclaimer, it is more on the denser side of a book. It is just above 500 pages, I believe like 526, 529, but please don't let the page count deter you. This is a great book. Not only does it explore family dynamics, but it is a call to action for the reader to pay more attention to ecological conservation, but more on that later. The plot. Greenwood is a multi-generational saga that charts one family's rise and fall, including their secrets and their inherited crimes. And the stories are accompanied by one steady presence: trees. So the story starts off when we are transported to the early 1930s, and we meet the first Greenwood member, which is Everett Greenwood, whom really sets off this domino effect of bad things that happen to the family. And this happens because he hears an infant cry and finds that it has been abandoned. And that action led to him being tangled up in a web of crime. that follows his family for generations. And really, that single event leaves a stain on the Greenwood family. We then go to the year 1974, where we meet Willow Greenwood. Then to the year 2008, where we meet Liam Greenwood. And finally, we end in the year 2034, when we meet the final Greenwood family member, which is Jake Greenwood, who works as a tour guide for these ultra-rich, lush, posh, rich folks who come to the one and only forest in the whole entire world. That's where the ecological conversation piece comes in. As we lean towards the end of the book, it moves away from that multi-generational saga to Please Save Our Trees saga. And we see that with Jake, who is just so overwhelmed and frustrated with knowing where his ancestors came from, who lived on their own land, who were surrounded by trees and crops and flowers. And now he has to, tote around this group, like I said, of posh, rich folks who this is like a vacation to them. But for Jake, it's his job. And he's trying to get these folks to listen to him, to understand, to conserve the one and only forest remaining. And so that's how the story ends. Not sure if it ends on a good note or a low note. I think that's for you guys to read and to let me know. But it really does sound like a great novel, because it acts as a parable for how catastrophic deforestation can be, and how we as man are destroying our land. And the books like this are taking us into the future, but it doesn't have to be our future. If we take heed of what these authors are saying, like Michael Christie with Greenwood, then maybe we won't be like Jake in 2034 and we're showing off the little known attractions that we have. Moving on, you guys know by now that I love a good YA book. I say, in my very humble opinion, that I think YA authors are at the forefront of making dynamic and powerful characters using unique plot devices, and they evoke the strongest of feelings. And this next book fits the bill completely. And it was kind of cheating, but it had the word nature in the title, so it was very fitting. Here we have The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. Here, Rachel has created a world in which witches maintain the climate, and their power, the witches' power, peaks from the sun in the season in which they were born. So if you were born in summer, your power is more related to the summer season. If you were born in winter, so on and so forth. But our main character, Clara, is different than any other witches. She is what is known as an Everwitch, which is very rare and very special, because she can control all 4 seasons. So you can tell automatically that Clara is going to be wanted, she is going to be pursued, because her power is something different from everyone else. But the story follows Clara as she attends a school for witches known as the Eastern School of Solar Magic. And here she is trained to strengthen and control her seasonal magics. But Clara is very kind of resistant to being a witch, especially an Everwitch. So she tries to push her magic away. But due to some mishaps, she begins to fear that her magic does more harm than good. But when we get some new additional characters introduced into the book, and as the seasons go on, Clara learns more about herself and therefore more about her powers. The Nature of Witches has been quoted as a great book for those of you who love fantasy, especially those of you who love YA. And that is partly because it has some of the best parts of other fan favorites, such as Practical Magic, the movie Twister, and the book Harry Potter, which we know that. Anyway, and I will explain the connections with each of those 3 mediums. So for starters, The Nature of Witches and Practical Magic, they share one thing in common, and that is that they have a main character who is very resistant against their magic. If you remember the movie Practical Magic and Sandra Bullock's character, Sally, she spends, I want to say, maybe 65% of the movie pushing her magic away, trying to live normal, telling her children to live normal, and then, when her sister comes in, Jilly, things happen, and then she embraces her magic. That's the same thing happening here with Clara. So that's how they connect. As for the movie Twister, it's kind of self-explanatory. Both The Nature of Witches and the movie Twister both exhibit wild and volatile behavior. And going back to what I mentioned about Greenwood and about how man is destroying the earth, when it comes to The Nature of Witches, the witches are having a harder time maintaining the weather because of man. We're polluting it, climate change, we're littering, we're not taking care of our oceans. And because of this, the witches are having to counterbalance what man is doing. So that's how it connects with Twister. We know the premise of Twister. There's a big scary tornado coming and wreaking havoc. And lastly, with Harry Potter, the connection there is that, with Harry Potter, there was Hogwarts. And here with The Nature of Witches, we have the School of Solar Magic, solar being the key word there, because again, these witches are primarily focused on the weather. So if you like any of those three titles, Practical Magic, Twister, Harry Potter, I think you'll find something here that you can connect with and you will enjoy the book. And lastly, for all of you thriller lovers out there, in case you need something to keep you on your toes while you're tucked under a blanket this weekend, I have something for you. I recommend any Jane Harper book. We actually have several of hers in our collection, but for this episode today, we're going to be talking about her book, Exiles, which is her third book in the Erin Falk series. And just another disclaimer, although it is the third book in the series, it can be read as a standalone. You don't have to read the first two in the series to know what's going on in this one. The only similarity is that the main character, Erin Falk, is there. So imagine if you're familiar with Karen Slaughter and her Grant County series, it follows the same investigator, but they're all different stories. So just want to throw that out there. So here in Exiles, we're again following FBI investigator Erin Falk, who is traveling to a lush wine country in southern Australia to help his best friend celebrate the birth of his son. But once Detective Falk is there, he is immediately thrust into an investigation into a year-long missing woman's case, a Kim Gillespie, who disappeared at a festival one warm spring night. So Erin begins talking with the family and friends, and he's beginning to suss them out. And he's starting to think that, this tight-knit community isn't as tight as they're letting off to be. Secrets are starting to spill out. People are letting truths be known. And so now Erin has to investigate the family and friends to figure out what happened to the young mother 1 year ago. I would highly recommend any other Jane Harper book. We have Force of Nature here in our catalog. And a lot of her books take place in the Australian outback. Like I said, this one here takes place in the lush wine country. We have a book here in our catalog that takes place in a fictionalized beach town off the island of Tanzania. So lots of good stuff happening with Jane Harper. I highly recommend you check her out. So all in all, spending time outside is great for both your mental and your physical health, but if you look outside, you probably can't do a lot of that this weekend. So I highly recommend that you do the alternative. Explore nature through a book. Thank you for joining me. See you next time. Bye.